I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you my brand story, and I'll explain why when I'm done. So we start out. I like to refer to myself as a recovering engineer. Yes, they have a 12-step program for that. I graduated with my engineering degree from Northwestern, and I went to work for the Borg. Yes, IBM. I was assimilated. Resistance was futile. And for the next 22 years, I wandered around IBM. And after in 1999, when they screwed me on my pension, and then I said, I don't trust you anymore, I went to work for a successful semiconductor startup, Agira.
Hey, Mark. Sorry
Yep.
to interrupt you there. It looks like the screen hasn't advanced yet from that webinar
Okay.
placeholder.
Okay.
Thanks.
So
Sorry.
let's go see. Do you see it now?
We see the webinar will begin soon, that very
Okay.
first slide. There
Okay,
it is.
so-
Yep.
Okay, you got it now?
Yep, recovering engineer.
Okay,
Thank you.
cool. Yes, I am a recovering engineer. As I said, in 1999, IBM screwed me on my pension. I then, in January of 2000, left to go work for a successful tech startup. And then on July 11th of 2002, I was riding my bicycle on, and I'm a big-time cyclist. I came down a hill at about 30 miles an hour. I turned into a blind turn. Unfortunately, there was a Toyota Corolla going the other direction at about 30 miles an hour, and we hit head-on. And if you look at the picture, notice that's July 25th of 2002. That was exactly 2 weeks after the accident. I spent 5 days in the trauma center. I broke a bunch of bones. I tore up a knee. I broke a hip. I dislocated a shoulder, but I had no internal injuries and no brain injuries I'm willing to admit to. And so they had me walking on crutches in 3 days. I was back on a bike in 10 weeks, flying back to China in 4 months. So the following year, I laid myself off. I volunteered for a layoff, went to work, and I went off and got my math teaching certificate and taught high school math and internal at a inner city high school for 2 years, teaching Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. I was highly successful. I couldn't do that and stay healthy. I then quit that, went to work for the Jewish Community Center, doing corporate fundraising. By the way, I couldn't, after a year, I gave that up because, by the way, being a non-Jew, being the face of a Jewish organization is interesting. And I relapsed. I went back to another startup, Life Size, and in 2011, I started my business career pivot. And I primarily focus on career transitions for baby boomers, and because I'm on my 7th career change. So with that said, that's my brand story. Notice I didn't tell you very much about what I've done in my career. Because your brand story should tell people who you are and not what you do. And that's one of the key elements that you need to focus on, is figuring out what is your brand. And by the way, we all have a brand. So what I'd like from you right now is we're going to do 2 quick polls, because I want to know who's out there. So the first one is, I don't know, Bree or Jen will pull up the poll, and I want to know how many years of work experience you have. Less than 10, between 10 and 20, 20 and 30, more than 30.
All right. Excuse me. The results are coming in. Give people a couple more seconds to click their answer. It's fun to watch these little bars change. So it looks like the majority are at between 20 and 30. So to round out all the areas, we have 6% with less than 10 years, 29% between 10 and 20 years, 40% between 20 and 30 years, and 25% with more than 30 years.
Cool. So let's go to the second poll.
All right, that one's up and running now.
And what I want to know is, what's your status? Are you employed, looking to change jobs, looking to change careers, unemployed, retired, or re-entering the workplace?
All right, and our answers are coming in. Give people a few more seconds to choose their status from the list. And it looks like we have a pretty good mix. Yep, looks like we've stalled out here. So about 20% are employed but looking to change jobs. 15% are employed but looking to change careers. 43% are unemployed. 4% are retired, and 17% are re-entering the workforce.
I always find re-entering the workforce to be the interesting number. Because that can mean a lot of different things. So let's go ahead and take the poll down, and let's get started on what a brand is. So we all know these famous brands, and I'm presuming you see my slides up. Is that true?
Good.
Okay, good. Oops, did too much. So all of these brands, they focus on a message. So the first one I always like to mention is the Golden Arches, McDonald's. McDonald's very much is focused on certain phrases or more importantly products. If you talk to your kids, and by the way, don't tell me when you hear McDonald's you think of crappy food, because your kids think Happy Meal. Their signature food is their French fries. And by the way, one of the areas they're working on moving into is coffee, and they're not doing a very good job of it. So the next one I want to mention is Starbucks. Starbucks has some very interesting branding. Now, most people, if you show them the Starbucks logo, which is right there next to Google, it's not memorable. Why is it a little mermaid with a, queen, looks like a crown on her head? When you walk into a Starbucks store, the first thing most people will notice is the aroma. And they do that on purpose. By the way, smell and aroma are one of the most potent memory triggers. So I'll use the example. When I smell diesel fumes, I think Yankee Stadium. And you're wondering, Yankee Stadium? Well, as a kid growing up in New Jersey, my brother and I in the 1960s and 70s would go into New York City in the summer to go to Yankee doubleheaders. They used to have twilight doubleheaders. First game would start at 5 o'clock. And my brother and I would ride the bus into New York City going through the Holland Tunnel. And it would be that very, very heavy diesel fume that I would smell, and it still triggers memory. Now, let's go down to Apple. Apple is a very, very famous brand. I want you to think back, what did the Apple logo used to look like? The old logo actually looked like a rainbow. It had stripes of color. They changed the logo when they went from Apple Computer Corporation to Apple. In other words, they went from a computer company to a consumer electronics company. That's where you get the nice slick logo, and they want you to remember, if you remember all the original iPod commercials with the guys dancing around, it had a very, very distinctive feel to it. And it was important, is one of the things they were trying to do is promote their brand through that distinctive feel. The last one I want to talk about is Nike. We all know Nike has one signature saying, just do it. And they've heavily promoted that. So when people see that swoosh, for most of us, the first thing that comes to our mind is just do it. So how does this apply to you? Well, you have a brand, whether you like it or not. So I like Jeff Bezos' comment, which is, or his quote from, he's the CEO of Amazon, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So one of the things that you need to go find out and ask is, what do people think about you? Now, in the old days, when I joined IBM in 1978, that was your reputation. Your reputation typically followed you from job to job. Well, today you are competing against people from around the world. So you have to first define your brand. And before you even start about trying to build a LinkedIn profile and how you're going to attract them, because we're going to talk about it's who you are and then who are you trying to target. That is one of the key factors. So, first thing is picture. Now, I'm going to let these sit up. My guess is one of these pictures has pissed you off. Okay, and now I'm going to have to get rid of John Boehner as he leaves office. Previously, I had when I started doing this 3-4 years ago, I used to have Mitt Romney. Then I put Newt Gingrich to replace him, and I had a lot of kids didn't know who Newt Gingrich was. But the point is, your picture generates emotions. So what emotions does your picture generate? Think about it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to determine what makes a good picture. Now here I have this gentleman wrote for the can't exactly remember his name, but he wrote for the LinkedIn Talent blog, and he did 6 pictures and he tested them out. And he tried them and said which would be the most successful. So I'm going to do a little poll here. And I want you to look at those, and I want you to type in the question box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, whichever one you think is the best. And I'm going to ask Bree or Jen just kind of glance through and see which ones do you think are the most popular. So enter the number.
A lot of 1s, a lot of 3s, quite a few 6s. I saw 1 5. I haven't seen any 4s yet. I haven't seen any 2s yet.
Okay. So have they stopped coming in?
Yep, they've slowed down pretty much.
Okay. Okay.
It looks like number 1 wins.
Okay. Well, the winner is number 6. Now, you're probably wondering why number 6. Well, the reason why number 6 generated him the most income was because of the background. He's on a main. He's a keynote speaker, and you can tell that by the background. So when you do your picture, you have to think about what is the background. What is it saying about you? So yes, you have to get strategic. So when we start getting our LinkedIn photos taken, or better yet, you go get a headshot. By the way, that's my headshot. You may notice that behind me there is a bridge, and if you live in Austin, it's an iconic bridge. It's the 360 bridge, and I use now. You're probably thinking he's not sitting out by that bridge, and if you think that, you're exactly right. It was done on a green screen. And I actually have 4 different backgrounds that I use. Now, one of the challenges of using the background is you have to choose clothes that go with all of them. Which, number 1, it means I need help. I have an image consultant. I actually went to a Corey Howell here locally, who's our headshot supreme person here. She's really good. I brought 3 different shirts with me, and she picked the one that she thought would work best. Yes, I have no taste. So I go get help, and for most of you guys, you need to probably go get some help. And so the key piece here is think about the background and the clothes you're going to wear, and what you're going to see is the headshot, remember, the headshots are rectangular, but social media pictures, they're square. So once you crop the image down, does the background still work? Yes, you need to plan this out. This is a common problem with people who have taken rectangular photographs, headshots, and then have to crop them down. Do they still work? So that's mine. It was done by, again, a professional photographer. Here's my buddy Amy. Amy, this was taken by somebody with just an iPhone. I want you to notice her head tilt. She's not staring straight into the picture. She's got a nice angle. One of the key pieces here is the head tilt and the chin line. And if you go to my website, I'm going to give you a link to a bunch of blog posts where I actually have a video done by a photographer in LA on chin line. As we get older, the chin line becomes absolutely important. And how you adjust the chin for your picture. The next thing I want you to notice is, well, this is my buddy Nando. Nando's a creative. Nando's cool. Nando's a good buddy of mine. He's absolutely a fascinating guy. And a lot of people who are in the corporate world look at this picture and go, barf. The problem is that's not who he's trying to attract. He's trying to attract other creatives. So one of the key pieces for your image, for your LinkedIn photo or Twitter or any other, is who's the target audience? You're not trying to attract everyone. Who's the hiring manager or the recruiters? What industry are they in? What are the characteristics? You know, what do they look for? Because, by the way, we're going to see this over and over again. It's not what you think, it's what they think. And by the way, you need to go ask. The last one I'm going to show you here is my buddy Scott Ingram. Scott's a sales guy. Now, what I want you to look at is, where do you think the camera is? Well, the camera is above him. He's looking up. It's an inviting photograph. He wants to be approachable. He's a sales guy. By the way, really nice sales guy. But he wants to be approachable. And so one of the things to think about is the camera angle of how it's being taken. Do you want it looking up at you, down at you, from the side? All of these are real critical factors. Now, with that, one of the next questions I'd like to ask, and you can say yes, no, or maybe, given what you've seen here, are you happy with your LinkedIn photo? So go ahead and type that into the question box.
All right, it looks like we have quite a few yeses. That's a good sign.
Good.
A good number of no's. And then some people that are think maybe, or they're somewhat.
Okay, that's what I would typically think. So I'm going to give you a
bunch of people actually that don't have one yet. So this is a good way to start out with the right foot.
Oh, you have to have a photo. Without a photo, you're not a real person. It's kind of like I have a client who's starting her business. She says, I don't want a website. If you don't have a website, you're not real. It's kind of like in the old days. If you weren't in the yellow pages, you weren't real. So one of the things I want you to be able to do is, there is a website called photofeeler.com. It is free. And it will pick up either your Twitter or your LinkedIn photo, and you can have people vote on your photo. Now, the way you do this is you get credits for voting on other people's photos. This is really key. It's at least some feedback on your current photo. And when you do, and this is one of the things you can do, is you can switch multiple backgrounds. Now, the key piece here is, I highly recommend spending some money to get your picture done by a professional. If you don't want to do that or don't want to spend the money, you can do really good pictures with phones. The key piece is, find someone who know what they're doing. Get good lighting, preferably natural lighting. Go outside. By the way, office lighting is horrible because it tends to be all overhead, which tends to create shadows underneath your chin, which, by the way, is the 10 to 20 pounds you gain on video. You know, I used to be in a video conferencing startup. So the key piece here is you need feedback. And at least with photofeeler.com, and I have no affiliation with them, I just happen to like it, it's a good way to at least get some basic feedback. So with that, questions. So do we have any questions in the queue?
We don't yet, but I bet if we wait a couple seconds, we might have a couple come in here. Let's see. I had one person say not yet, so that's good. Sounds like you're covering everything so far.
Good. So the key piece here is one of the common questions is, and this is one I get asked all the time, how often should I get a new picture taken? And for women, it's usually every time you change your hairdo. And in fact, I just met with a potential client the other day. She goes, God, I change it 3 times a year. It's like, well, and that's where, and by the way, one other thing that you have to be very careful for those of us who are a little bit older, is don't over Photoshop. That is one of the biggest issues, is people will get on Photoshop. I had one guy I met, and when I looked at his LinkedIn photo, I didn't recognize him. 2, I had a client who was in her early 30s, very, very attractive woman, but her picture was from her early 20s. I'm sorry, she looked like a kid. I had her go retake a picture, be more current, because it showed up. You know, when you're 22, 23, whether you're a guy or a gal, I'm sorry, you look like a kid. And when you hit your early 30s, it's different. So, do you have any questions that have popped in?
Yep, we have a few questions here.
Sure.
So someone asked, is it okay to have a formal picture on LinkedIn, or should the photo be one that makes you look like you do every day?
Okay.
Or should you be formally dressed?
The question comes down to is, who are you trying to attract? So if you are going into a formal environment, and that's what, then yes. If you are a software developer, and like for example, at my first startup, I wore T-shirts every day. If I was someone like that, and that's who I'm trying to attract, yeah, I'd wear a T-shirt. In other words, be very tactical. In other words, that's not a right answer. So if you were looking for, let's say, an accountant or a CPA, and you were in a torn-up T-shirt, and it was casual, would you want to hire them? Probably not. So what other questions do you have?
We also have a question about using multiple pictures on LinkedIn. Is that an option, or do you have to have only one picture?
You can only have one picture. Now, you can, and we'll talk about, there is a rich media where you can add other things to your profile. If you want to add other photos, that's where I would. But I'd have a reason for doing that. Again, one of the things I want to get people to think is think very strategically.
Yep, that makes sense.
Right? Anything else? Let's take one more.
Let's take one more here. It looks like we have a number of women actually asking about hairstyles, or actually, and men too. Gray versus color. How does that affect in ageism? You know, is that something that you should be concerned about, your hair color in a picture?
Yes. Again, you want to make sure that you are attracting the people that you want to get hired by. Now, if the folks that I'll use an example. I have a client who walked into an office investment firm where everybody was under 30, and she walked in wearing a very conservative blue suit. I'm sorry, she walked out half hour, 45 minutes later. She was supposed to be there for 3 hours. Yes, you should. If the audience you're trying to attract is younger, yes, I would probably color my hair. I would be definitely looking at my hairstyle so it's more current. Because, put it bluntly, if you look old, people will think you are old. And if the hiring managers are in their 30s, you don't want them thinking about grandma and grandpa. Yes, age discrimination is alive and well, and it's something you have to consider. Okay, so let's move on. So the next thing is using the words that you want to use. What's the vocabulary? Now I'm going to give you a link to a blog post that's going to actually demonstrate what I'm going to tell you. This is a word cloud. If you haven't used a word cloud, it's where I take a bunch of text, and this happens to be the very first time I did this presentation for Network in Austin, and and I took the description and threw it into a word cloud. This one happens to be thrown into Wordle, W-O-R-D-L-E, and I'll give you the website here in a second. And what it did was create a picture. The larger the text, the more common the word shows up. So here, the most common word is LinkedIn. Mark is very prominently. Networking is very prominent. And by the way, if you look in the bottom left-hand corner, took a number of times, there's a phrase down called nasty baby. Why that showed up, I'm not sure. But word clouds are very valuable for you to harvest vocabulary. So I'm going to give you a link to a video and to a set of blog posts where one, I took a job description. It happened to be a training manager. I spent most of my career in training from a company called Maximus, and I cut and pasted all the text, and I threw it into a word cloud. And I used Tag Crowd, which again, I'll give you the link to that in a second. And I said, I only want to see the top 10 words. Oh, and by the way, give me the numbers. Tell me the frequency. And the number one word that came up out of that job description was management. So what I did was I went back into the job description, and I found that management was used, number one, in learning management system and project management. Word clouds are great for harvesting keywords, but more importantly, go back and see what the keyword phrases are, or long tail phrases. Because one of the things you want to be able to do is you want to be able to identify the words that you need to highlight in your resume, your LinkedIn profile. And you can do this with product descriptions, anywhere on somebody's website to come up with their vocabulary. So I'll use a classic example. I recently did some interview training with a client who happens to work for AMD, Advanced Micro Devices. And he interviewed with Qualcomm. And he honestly believes he did not get the job because they were using different terminology to mean the same things. In other words, they talked right past each other. He did not adjust to the Qualcomm vocabulary. So it's really key that you understand it's not the words that you use, it's the words that they use. And this is primarily the target companies that you would like to get hired by. So vocabulary is really key, and using word clouds. Now, here are the top two URLs I've given you are the two word cloud tools I use. Wordle produces prettier pictures. I like using tagcrowd.com. And if you will gently copy down that URL on the bottom, that is a series of blog posts which includes a video on how to use the word cloud that you can go back and refer to. So I'll leave that up for a few seconds. while I clear my throat and get a drink of water. So, the next thing is your LinkedIn headline. And by the way, this is a buddy of mine who still works for IBM. I've covered up his picture to protect his. And by default, what your headline will say is job title at company. By the way, that is useless. It tells me something that I can find elsewhere in the LinkedIn profile. When recruiters and hiring managers are sourcing an individual, in other words, they're outsourcing, they're searching for people. They are searching, number one, on keywords in current job title. Now, for those of you who are unemployed, you need to have a current job title. Absolutely imperative, because that's what people are searching on. So for example, I've gone through a couple spells of unemployment. I used to have a little consulting house. I just owned the name. I had it called Global Basis Consulting. I could have easily said Mark Miller Consulting. By the way, it's M-A-R-C. My mama knew how to spell. And the whole idea here is they are searching on current title. Now, your current title field should have every variation of your current job title. So I'll use the example. I work with a lot of product managers. If you are a product manager, but you also do product marketing, you should have in your current title field product manager, probably a vertical bar or some kind of separator, and product marketing. Because what they're doing is they're searching on the current job title. Now you gotta be honest. You can't lie. But I would put every variation on that current job title. If you're unemployed, I'd put every job title that you're interested in being found for. Let's say you're a project manager. Maybe you're also a program manager. I would put both of those in my current job title. Okay, so the headline. This is my buddy John. John works for the Census Bureau in D.C. And number one, notice he has in his headline, government, star operational logistics manager, star data analysis, star healthcare program manager. Those are all keywords he wants to be found for. Now also, he puts his phone number in there. One of the things we're going to talk about is I want you to make it as easy as pie to get a hold of you. Now you can put it in your headline or you can put it in your summary. But one of the things I want you to do is put how you want to be contacted. Now, is this his cell phone number? No, it's not. It's a Google Voice number, which forwards on. And so And there are lots of other forwarding services other than Google Voice. And by the way, I did a blog post this last year on LinkedIn Publisher that went viral, which was the 5 things in your resume they say you're too old. And one of them is putting a home phone number on your resume. Don't do that. If you have lousy cell service in your home, then go again, get a Google Voice number. But one of the things I want you to do is make it as easy as possible to get a hold of you. You also may want to, instead of the phone number, put your email address up there. And I get a lot of people going, well, the recruiters, they can find that information. I said, why make them look? Make it easy. Now, the other thing you can do, and this is my headline and my buddy Jason Alba, is put your tagline in there. So Jason Alba puts number 1, www.jibberjobber.com, which is, that's Jason's business, organize your job search, manage your career. Those are his taglines. In mine, I put careerpivot.com. I tell you I'm an author of a book, and I'm the Forbes Top 100 Career Websites. Now, by the way, this headline is 120 characters. Use all of it. Now, if you go to plug this in, you're going to end up with a little box you've got to put it into. So what you're going to do is you're going to go into probably Word, use the word tools, the word count tools, type it out to 120 characters or as close as you can get to, and plug it in. Now, one of the issues you are going to find, and let me go back, is I have a premium membership, Jason does not. One of the things you're concerned about is how does the text wrap? Now, if you add extra spaces, it does you no good. It will take the extra spaces out. So one of the things you're going to do is you're going to play around and see how this kind of works. Does it give you the right feel? So with that, questions. And feel free to keep on filling in questions as we go along.
Yep, we have a bunch of them coming in. Excuse me. So if you are unemployed, what would you put in your headline? What are some suggestions you have for that?
I would put all the keywords that you want to be found for. I would not put in looking for a job. You're not going to be found that way. The headline is one of the key places where sourcers are out searching. And so, by the way, what most of the recruiters who do sourcing, which is they're out looking for talent, they're searching on current job title and a keyword. Now, those keywords, the more frequently they appear in your LinkedIn profile, the higher you will rank. So one of the easy ways of doing this is at the end of each section, your summary and each job category, each job you've had, put the text keywords, colon, and then keyword, keyword, keyword. In other words, be incredibly obvious what you're doing. This is much better than trying to keyword stuff into text. So, another question.
Yes. Actually, we have a question about when you were creating your Wordle word cloud, where did you get those words from? Was that from your LinkedIn profile or from this presentation?
That was the description of this presentation that was posted on the Network in Austin website.
Perfect.
So one of the things you can do, one of the key things is, and again, the video is taking job descriptions, cut and paste, plug them into a word cloud, and see what the most common words are. And by the way, it eliminates thes, ands, is, all the common words.
Perfect. All right. And then a number of people are asking, you mentioned LinkedIn Premium. Do you recommend paying for that next level of service on LinkedIn for job seekers, or is that something more for?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I happen to use, and you can determine how long you're going to use it. I happen to have the cheapest business plan, which is like $25 a month. It's $250 or $60. I just paid the bill, $270 a year. Something, I don't remember what it was. It was under $300. And there are a couple of reasons. Number one, you can now see who's looked at your profile forever. Two, if you go to my website and you say contact me, you will fill out a little form, and you can fill it out, and it sends me, I use JotForm, it sends it to me. I find when I email these people back, and I'm emailing for the first time from my domain, oh, by the way, significant number of times the emails end up in spam filters. So I send in-mails. usually the first time I contact somebody. If they respond back, and I think with the business plan I get 5 a month. By the way, if they don't expire. If they respond to that in-mail, it costs me nothing. But more importantly, I know they actually are going to get it. It's going to get through spam filters and junk mail. That is, in my opinion, one of the big reasons for using it. Okay?
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on. So the next thing is a summary. And by the way, this is a summary statement from a good friend of mine who says, I'm well-educated, well-rounded professional with international experience and background in sales and operations management. Boring! Okay. The important piece is this is someone who's very internationally experienced. By the way, this is my buddy Uwe Blob. By the way, Uwe is 7 feet 2 inches tall. He played for Bobby Knight at Indiana. He played in the NBA for 6 years for the Mavericks, the Rockets, and the Spurs. He played in 2 Olympics, once against the Dream Team. He works for Cala Vista now as a project manager. And he goes, well, that's old news. No, it's not. It's who you are. I mean, when you walk up to Uwe, the first thing you always say, I always joke, he's the one man I can look up to. By the way, I'm 6'4". Is the first question you're going to ask him is, did you play basketball? Well, the key piece here is, in your summary, I want you to write your brand story. So, this is the start of my brand, of my summary. I've had an eclectic career, to say the least. My journey includes 22 years at IBM, several thriving tech startups, a painful stint as a high school teacher, a gig raising funds for the Jewish Community Association of Austin, and a near-fatal bicycle accident that changed my perspective forever. After reading that, I certainly hope you want to read the rest. So this is writing it, and by the way, you're going to write it in first person, and you're going to tell your story. That's why I told you my brand story at the beginning. When I go to meetings, networking meetings, I tell my brand story. I want people to know who I am, what I value. When I meet someone at a networking event, by the way, I don't care what you do. I want to know who you are. Now, you have lots of opportunities in the rest of your profile to tell me what you've done. So let me give you one more example, because I know we're running a little bit long. This is a client of mine who he wrote that I'm a product manager who knows how to get my colleagues to listen. They listen because I take complex business and technical opportunities and they bring them into focus. And we use this concept of bringing things into focus throughout the story. By the way, this came out of him telling me he likes to talk a lot. Now, the key piece here is this was written by his wife. One of the things I want you to understand is the worst person to write your brand story is you. Mine was written by my co-author. You will suck at writing your own brand story. You need to get outside expertise. I've had some absolutely gorgeous brand stories written by adult daughters. It is best done by someone who knows you and can actually brag on you. So I'm going to skip over that brand story. And so at this point, let's take one more set of questions. Let's just take one here.
All right, let's see here. Oh, this is an interesting question. So a lot of people have heard of elevator pitch, and a number of people are asking if your brand story is also an elevator pitch. Could you kind of use it in that way?
The answer is usually your elevator pitch is short. Your brand story should take you a couple of minutes to tell. Very often your elevator pitch tells you what you do. Again, I can't not emphasize enough. I want to know who you are. So there is a difference between your elevator pitch, which, by the way, tells me, in fact, I've got a blog post, I've got a series of blog posts, which is based on what problems do you solve and how do you solve them, versus your brand story is, I want to know who you are. Big differentiation there. So and we'll stop for questions at the end. So the next thing, in your LinkedIn profile, I want you to tell me how do I know you know your stuff? So one of the ways you can do this is write LinkedIn publisher posts. I worked for many years in high tech. I couldn't publish what I did because it was proprietary. So what I've had a number of clients do is start writing things based on what they see. I've got one client who's getting back into the media business. He's been out for 5 years, believe it or not, running a hedge fund. And he's trying to get back into the media business. And he's writing LinkedIn publisher posts based on things that he sees and he wants to comment on. Oh, by the way, we take those and tweet them out with the handles of people that he wants to pay attention to. So one is LinkedIn publisher. 2, on your summary and on every job, you can post, you can point to presentations that you've given. You can put them up on SlideShare. You actually can upload them. YouTube videos, brochures, photographs. I had a client here recently, late 50s, sales guy working in a very niche industry. And what we did was we uploaded links to his last job, which he'd been there for 20 years, to all the product descriptions of what he sold. So people would immediately go, wow, he dealt with a lot of complex manufacturing equipment. And so we linked to probably 6 or 8 different products that told a story. Basically it said, this guy knows what he's talking about. And by the way, he got hired by a company in an adjacent industry, which is a whole different story, which has to do with LinkedIn company pages. So the last thing I want to talk about is you got to Google yourself. When people search on stuff, who are they going to find? And so if you notice here, I'm searching on Mark Miller, Austin, Texas, because Miller is a really common name. Notice my website comes up first, but my LinkedIn profile comes up at second. So again, in the blog posts, I show you how to make sure your public profile is visible by everyone. Yes, on LinkedIn, you have to tell LinkedIn what to make visible to Google or any of the other search engines. So the key piece here, and by the way, I would implore you to go set up a Google alert on your name. By the way, I've been in prison several times. I'm also I'm a parks director, a state wildlife director in Illinois. There are a number of Mark Millers, but you should be monitoring your name. And you can just simply Google Alert and how to set those up. I search on various phrases. I have Google Alert set up on Career Pivot, Repurpose Your Career, which is my book, on Mark Miller. And I've got probably 1 or 2 others I can't think of right now. So, by the way, I just published a book called Personal Branding for Baby Boomers. Pretty much I go into more detail on everything I've covered in this presentation. By the way, this weekend I will be doing a 99-cent sale. And if you go subscribe on my website, you will get a notice. If you just subscribe to my blog, you will get a notice that I'm going to send something out on Friday evening when it finally goes to 99 cents. So what I want you to do is take 6 action items. Firstly, I want you to develop a set of words and phrases that brand you. Notice I refer to myself as a recovering engineer. When I worked for IBM, I used to refer to myself as either an articulate techno-weenie or a geek that could speak. 2, have a picture taken of you that properly brands you. Don't take a selfie. Please don't take a selfie. If you not want to spend the money on a professional picture, get someone who actually can help you. Someone who actually knows something about lighting, camera position, and hopefully knows something about good colors. Write your LinkedIn headline. That brands you. In other words, I wanted to so you be found, but it tells your story. Write your brand story. Get some help. Add rich media to your profile. In this, I mean, show me that you know your stuff. It's not good enough to tell me you know your stuff. You've got to show me you know your stuff. And lastly, check your public LinkedIn profile and set up searches. Search on your name, search on anything else that's relevant to you. So, questions. We've got some time left. We've got about 5 minutes. By the way, feel free to contact me at mark@careerpivot.com. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, just in the connection request, tell me the fact that you were on this webinar. Again, I have my white paper library, my blog posts, my SlideShare. They'll all stay up for a few minutes while we're taking questions. Oh, and by the way, my Facebook page. It's lonely. Friend it.
All right.
Facebook, I post stuff out there 2-3 times a day, but Facebook is not my primary vehicle. So, any questions?
All right. Yes, we have a number of questions coming in. First, can you actually go back to that last slide with the 6 actions? Somebody would like to take some notes there.
Sure. There we go.
And then, is it important, well, where did this question go? It was, if you don't have anything come up when you Google yourself, is that bad? Do employers want to see something, or is it okay to kind of have nothing out there?
Your name should, if your LinkedIn profile, if you're not found when you Google your name, that's not good. Now, sometimes, because I said Mark Miller is such a common name, I Google Mark Miller, Austin, Texas. So yeah, you really want to be found.
Yep, exactly. Excuse me. And one person actually just has a suggestion for the rest of the group, is that her cousin uses a middle initial to her in her professional name to distinguish herself from other people, particularly a stripper by the same name, which is kind of funny. So thank you, Aaron, for that information. That's smart, I think, to kind of use that your full name if you have a common name.
And by the way, if you have alphabet soup after your last name, make sure and put it in your last name field. So if you have an MBA, PhD, PMP, make sure and put that after your last name.
Oh, good to know there too. And LinkedIn Publisher, somebody's asking about LinkedIn Publisher and how they could get started with that.
LinkedIn Publisher, if you go to the top of your LinkedIn page and you say publish a post, it's right at the very top on your home page. Now, if you write something, it is a powerful tool. When you're ready to publish something, it will show up in your LinkedIn profile. But the key piece here is whatever you publish, get someone to proofread it. I can't emphasize that enough. Get someone else. I publish a lot of stuff. I can't get enough eyes on stuff.
All right, very good. And then somebody's asking about, image backgrounds. I know we talked a lot about images for LinkedIn profile pictures.
Yes.
Is it okay to have a white background, or should you aim to have something in the background?
I think the question is, how are you trying to brand yourself? If you are a nurse and white has a specific meaning, then there's no universal answer to that. It depends. It's does it tell your story? I had one time I gave this presentation, and an accountant said, "Well, how do I want to be perceived?" I said, "I don't know. How do you want to be perceived? You've got to figure that out."
Exactly. So we're talking about who do you want to attract. I love that.
That's right.
That question.
Right. What other questions?
Yep, I think this would be a good one to wrap it up. Somebody's asking about hobbies and things like that, sort of personal information. About 20 years ago, they were getting the opposite advice: don't get too personal. Hiring managers only want to know what you can do, not what your hobbies are. Are you saying to put out more personal information, and has there been a switch in that advice over the last 20 years or so?
I think they call this social media. So the answer is, if it's beneficial to you, the answer is yes. Now, do you go overboard? So, for example, do I put anywhere that I'm a ZZ Top fan or I like Dire Straits? The answer is heck no. Do I put my musical tastes out anywhere? Nope. Now, I do. Hopefully my presentation is going to be accepted by South by Southwest on social disruption, how social media has disrupted the job search. And one of the things I talk about is Twitter. And one of the things is when you want to find things that you have in common with hiring managers. And one example, I use one guy over at Spreadfast who happens to be a triathlete. He tweets about being a triathlete. Okay. It's social. So yeah, you can put it out there. You have to be strategic about what you're going to say.
Perfect. All right. I think that's probably a good place to end it. Mark, would you switch to that last slide again so people can see your contact information and all of that?
Yes.
Any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
Yeah, go ahead and follow me on Twitter. I'm getting a bunch of connection requests coming through. My phone is beeping like crazy. And so, yes, feel free to say you were on this webinar. Again, my book goes on sale for 99 cents this weekend. And what I'm doing is I'm asking people to buy it for 99 cents is write me a review. And by the way, I want you to write an honest review. If you don't like the book, say so. I want reviews. And so, I cover what I covered here and more. So, for example, in the book, I cover 3 different methods for writing your brand story, and who you might go to get people to help you write your brand story. Okay?
Great. All right. Thank you so much, Mark. This is really informative. Everyone who's on the call today, you'll be receiving an email in about 24 hours with a link to the recording of this webinar, and follow-up information. Will include these links in that email. We'll include information about FlexJobs and Career Pivot. So be on the lookout for that email. That should come to you by tomorrow at around the same time as right now. So Mark, thank you so much for your awesome information. We're having a lot of thank yous come in for you from the group. So thank you everybody who attended also. And from everybody at FlexJobs, thanks very much for attending, and best of luck in all your job searches.
Well, thank you very much. It's been great. You've been a great audience. You notice I try and engage people as much as possible.
Yes, which we all love. I think everybody's saying great job. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Great information, good stuff.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.